it never fails. Every year come fantasy football draft time, I see certain trends and I see certain patterns that I know are going to be there and I expect to be there, and they always end up being there. And I just sit there and like, huh? I predicted that was going to happen. Shame on these fools. And one of these patterns and trends that I see play out every year come fantasy football draft time is some point in time between round 6 to round 8. There's always that first courageous individual that steps to the plate and takes that first defense, and then everybody else seems to follow suit, and you get that huge ripple effect, and a bunch of other people start to panic, and then all hell breaks loose. And my whole problem with this is that the premium of pick that you have to spend to get a defense special teams unit early doesn't equate to the value that they actually get from that unit. I understand that people see sometimes these team defenses and special team units that can put up 20, 25, 30 points in a game, and they're like, I got to have that. And, there's nothing wrong with wanting to have that. But again, is it really worth picking one so early, especially when picking a team defense and special teams unit is really a bit of a crapshoot? And what I'm talking about is that sometimes people look at these drafts and they look at these defenses and they go based off of reputation and real world. And sometimes there's a big separation between real world and fantasy football. Like, you could have a consistently top 5 rated defense every single year in terms of yards allowed and points allowed and everything, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're a top 5 fantasy football defense, and that's a big thing. A perfect example of this are the San Francisco 49ers defensive slash special teams unit, Over the past couple of years, they've been one of the first 2 to 3 to 5 at worst defenses drafted every year in every fantasy football draft that I've been in. But that's based off of reputation and what people see in the real world. And that doesn't necessarily equate on the fantasy side. In 2012, based off of standard scoring from NFL.com, and I'll put the link down below so you can see what I'm talking about, just standard scoring, the San Francisco 49ers defense slash special teams finished 7th in 2012 and 6th in 2013. So all these people that were taking them as the first unit or the second unit or the third unit ended up spending more of a pick on them than they needed to, because the pick didn't match up and measure up to the production of the actual unit. These reputations of these certain units, it doesn't always equate to fantasy football success. And I wrote this down and I want to give this to you. Let's look at the top 10 commonly drafted defenses in fantasy football in 2013, kind of based off of a variance of factors, what I saw based off of performance in previous years, reputations earned, what have you. In some type of order, these were kind of the standard 10 defenses that you saw picked in 2013. Seattle, San Francisco, Chicago, Cincinnati, Arizona, St. Louis, Houston, New England, Denver, and Baltimore. Those are usually the top 10. You might throw a Pittsburgh in there based off of name and reputation. But again, in some of those teams' cases, like Baltimore, like in the case of Pittsburgh, the name and reputation does not necessarily measure up to the production. San Francisco most certainly didn't. If you took Chicago in 2013 as a defense and special teams unit, you paid a very dear price indeed. The Houston Texans as well. You look at the top 10 scoring defenses from 2013, I'd argue that 4 of them most likely were either drafted as backup defensive units or in a lot of cases weren't even drafted at all. The number 1 top point scoring defense last season was the Kansas City Chiefs with 204 based off of, again, a standard scoring format. Think about that. The number 3 unit, the Carolina Panthers, 193. Number 8, the Buffalo Bills at 145. Number 10, the Indianapolis Colts at 134. So how stupid and ridiculous do you look? How stupid and ridiculous do you feel if you sit there and spent a 6th-round pick on the San Francisco 49ers defensive special teams unit because somebody else took the Seahawks first and they beat you to the punch, so you couldn't let somebody else beat you to the punch. You had to take what you thought was the next best unit based off of reputation and not fantasy reality. And all the while, the 49ers gave you 164 points, and the Chiefs could have given you 204. And you could have taken them much later in every league that I was in. They were always available on the waiver wire. Or the Carolina Panthers, 193 points. 30, 40 points that you're leaving off the table. All the while, you could have spent a much later pick in your draft to take them, as opposed to the Niners that you had to spend a premium pick in order to take them. And always the complication comes in with team defenses and special teams. You're talking about one player in the case of like a quarterback, one running back, wide receiver, tight end, as opposed to an entire unit. An entire 11-man defense, the return game, and the return unit as a whole. That's a lot of varying factors. That's a lot of uncertainties. You can kind of guess sometimes based off of history and based off of what you expect to see what a quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end could do. It's really hard to figure out sometimes what an entire unit is going to do until you actually see them play out. So unless you're the amazing Kreskin or you've got this magical crystal ball and you never think you freaking get it wrong, even though we all know we do from time to time, and some of us more often than not, why would you sit there and take the unnecessary gamble and risk with the very limited chance at a huge payoff by taking one of these team defenses so early? Let's put it this way. Only 6 defenses last season and 6 defenses the year before that, in 2013, 2012, averaged 10 points per game or more. That's it. So you're spending, let's say, a 6th-round pick on a defense that might give you 10 points a game. Or an 8th-round pick, let's say if you took the Chicago Bears last season, for a defense that gave you about 7 or 8 points a game. How stupid do you look? How many double-digit running backs and wide receivers and tight ends and big scoring quarterbacks did you pass up on in order to take that defense that you just had to take because you thought they were key to your fantasy success? The difference between the number 5 and number 15 ranked fantasy football defense last season was less than 3 points per game. So, again, just because a defense is taken as one of the first 5 units doesn't equate to them being a top 5 unit at the end of the season as 2. And again, I emphasize KC number 1, Carolina number 3. 2 of the top 3, let alone top 5, 2 of the top 3 scoring defenses last year. And a lot of leagues weren't even drafted. If they were drafted as a backup unit very, very late in the draft process. Less than 3 points a game. I want to give you a couple scenarios here really quick. Let's go back to 2013. And let's say in the 7th round, you took Denver's defense because in 2012, they were 2nd. They had like 182 points. You thought they were going to be even better. And then the season happened and they only had 125 points. And then let's say in the 15th round, you were actually a bit of a genius like maybe me, and you drafted somebody like Andre Ellington very late, and he gave you 126.3 points. So the running back you took in the 15th round scored more points over the course of an entire season than that defense you took in the 7th round. See where this doesn't wash? See where this doesn't equate? See where this doesn't make sense? Now imagine if you did this, and I did this in a couple of instances, not necessarily with the team defense, but I did wait till the second to last round to take my defense. I took a Le'Veon Bell in round number 7, who gave me 171.9 points. And then let's say in the 15th round, you took somebody like a Miami defense. It gave you 120. So if we went with what I did, I end up with like 291 points. If you did what a lot of other people did maybe, and that's, like I said, even giving you the benefit of the doubt with an Andre Ellington, it's 251 points. That's over a 40-point difference over the course of an entire season. And now you could still sit there and have, your defense still score you some points, but you've also got a more premium position player like a running back that you could line up at running back or at one of your flex positions, what have you. The benefits to doing it this way by taking a wide receiver or a running back earlier on and waiting to take that team defense, the benefits are just too numerous to sit there and justify spending such a premium pick on team defenses. One more example. Let's say in the 6th round, you got to the punch first. You took Seattle's team defense. You said that's the best defense in the league. They scored 194.5 points. Say in the 15th round, you took a wide receiver late, maybe Nate Washington, 109.9 points. Okay, let's say then on the flip side, you said, like I would, let's wait for the defense. And I'm going to take another running back here in round number 6. Let me get some depth at these premium scoring positions. DeMarco Murray, 6th-round pick, in like standard 10-team leagues, 205.1 points. So right there again, another example of a running back, in this case, scoring more than the team defense that is taken in the same round. And all the while, I'm able to come back in the 15th round, and maybe I say with Darrelle Revis there and some of the other pieces, I like Tampa's defense, and I take them. And they score 123 points. So my running back in the 6th round scores more than the team defense in the 6th round. My team defense in the 15th round scores more than the wide receiver in the 15th round. Why in the hell would you sit there and take the team defense so early? And furthermore, why do so many people waste 2 picks in a draft on team defenses? You're only going to play 1 in most leagues most weeks. And you talk about the bye week. Why would you eat up a roster spot for 10, 12, 14, 15 weeks just to use it one time as a bye? Use your waiver wire in that case. Look at who's got a favorable matchup when your primary defense has a bye and plug them in. Hell, after a couple of weeks of the season, you'll probably end up more likely than not finding your defense that you're going to line up with for the rest of the season in your fantasy football starting lineup. That's what people did with Carolina's defense last year or KC's defense last year. If they really look deep, maybe somebody like a Buffalo, for example. Again, I implore you, if you want to be successful in fantasy football, you got to understand what to do, when, how, and why. And this whole notion of taking a team defense early, I think, is very outdated and very obsolete, and frankly, the wrong way to approach your fantasy football draft. I assure you, you will be better off for it if you go into your fantasy football draft and as everybody else is panicking and falling into the ripple effect of taking a team defense, you stay patient, you stay true to your board, and you wait towards the end of the draft to take your team defense. Look at how deeper the rest of your team is opposed to these other guys, and look at how much better off you'll be come to the end of the season. I promise you, you'll like what you see.